Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I've got Logan with me. Logan, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, Jamie. This is another fine day in the Xbox neighborhood. How are you doing, man?
I'm really good. The past month has been apocalyptic online, but uh, you know, the past week I think a lot of people have gotten perspective. People have calmed down, and I think the rest of the year is just going to be good. We're obviously going to talk about all the stuff that's happened throughout the past few weeks, some stuff that's happened today, yesterday, and obviously what happened during the Xbox update. But before we get into all the topics, and we have a lot today, going over a lot of different style of topics. But before we get into all that, Logan, have you been playing anything interesting this past week?
Yeah, I've been juggling a couple titles. I've been playing Brotato quite a bit, which is, I'm a big Vampire Survivors junkie. Like I got all the achievements and like I've gone back and gotten pretty much all the characters except a few hidden ones and like one item I need to get. But other than that, I've pretty much completed everything. Super fun, just perfect podcast type game to play while you're listening to a podcast or whatever. Rotato's a lot like it, but kind of a different variant. Like instead of you having a like base stats and everything, you level up and skills and you get better with certain weapons or abilities and you combine things. It's like you have a run and you try to do the best you can during a run. And you can get all these crazy weapons and items. But the core idea of like Vampire Survivors, where you don't control the weapons or the spells abilities, but you just walk around and try to take as many out with you as possible, remains. It's a lot of fun. I see why Phil Spencer liked it so much and basically got it on Xbox, which is, perks of being the head of Xbox. You're like, hey, I like this game. I want it on my platform. Um, and then I've been playing Trepang 2 or Trepang Squared. I'm not sure how you say it. I mean, it looks like, squared like the math symbol for an
Yeah.
equation. But I've also seen it spelled out Trepang 2. But basically, it is a spiritual successor to Fear and Black and like the Half Life, like early 2000s FPS with some horror thrown in. Really fun, over the top gunplay, slow mo abilities. You can turn invisible briefly, like super reflexes. All the guns feel really good, and the combat and the lore is like super cool. Like it's got a good story, but like to get the most out of it, you pick up, the books or the scrolls or the emails, the cell phone posts, whatever, and you look through them. And you're like, oh my goodness, this is this is something else. Like this story and lore is pretty in depth, and I definitely recommend it if you are a fan of that era of games, or you're just looking for something new to try and it's at a good price as well. And there should be more story expansion coming this year. So it's a good time to play it if you haven't.
Nice, nice. I've been playing a bunch of different things. Persona 3 Reload. That game is it's good. It's really good. The problem with me is that it takes me so long to finish games because I play so many at the same time, which is not really the best idea. I wouldn't recommend people do that, but I've been playing that. I just started Judgment, which is the spin off from Yakuza. You play as a detective, also a martial artist. It's really cool. And what can I say? Like, if people don't like turn-based games, like the newer Yakuza games, try Judgment. It's really cool. And unlike the JRPG games, they actually have difficulty modes, which you can select. Um, I should say an easy mode, and I think Judgment actually has multiple ones. But even on normal, I think it's pretty good. I've also been playing Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. That game, I've said before, it doesn't end. that game just continues to go and go and go. And I think if people are looking for a long game that's going to last them a while, pick up that. You know, it does have its Far Cry elements, but outside of like the Far Cry stuff, it's very much its own thing. It has an extremely vertical map. I've been playing Brotato, like you said, it's Vampire Survivors. I think, you know, how people kicked up a fuss about Pal World ripping off Pokemon. None of those people are complaining about Brotato. It's the same game. It's just instead of a vampire with, you know, magic, you have a potato with machine guns, which, you know, it's the same but different. And I've actually been playing Assassin's Creed 4. I want to go back to it. I've really been wanting to go through the story again. And we'll kind of roll this into the next topic. Before we get into all the big stuff, I want to talk about Skull and Bones. Now, last week I talked about the beta and how, look, it's fun. The ship combat is fun, but it's not £70 fun, or $70. I can't see people buying that at full. Like, Logan, before I continue with everything related to the topic, whenever you see Skull and Bones, would you ever expect that to be a full price game?
No, I even said it last time on the show. Like, I wouldn't pay more than 20 for that. Maybe 30. Maybe if I'm feeling generous. It feels like a mode that was ripped from a Assassin's Creed sequel type game, and they spun it up as its own IP, and they put it out there, and it's like a dumbed down lesser version of a game that came out over a decade ago, and a mode from a game that came out over a decade ago, and you can't even do everything that you could from that type of thing from that game. It like, I think it's a game that'll have its fun moments and be like a nice, you know, try it every now and then kind of thing. But $70 is basically just like, well, Godspeed, son. You know, just throw them out there, you know, to the wolves on fire. It's just like, it's a disaster. Get the money while it's hot. Get it as much as we can from the sinking ship, and wash our hands of this thing. That's what it screams to me.
Yeah, from what I could tell, like Skull and Bones legally had to release under like because of Singapore's like development, or like they worked with the government on it or something. Like I think the funding came from the Singaporean government, something wild like that, and they had to release it. The game originally started off as a multiplayer mode for Assassin's Creed 4, and then it became its own thing. And like I put it like this: I posted clips of the Skull and Bones beta on Twitter, and even the Skull and Bones like official account retweeted my post because I said it's fun. Like fundamentally, the ship combat is fun, right? But it's all you do in the game, and there's a mechanic in this game, and I was actually secondhand embarrassed that this mechanic exists. So when you're sailing alongside a shore and you see some coconut trees, you actually get a button prompt to do this mini game where you cut down trees. And it's basically a slider that goes up and down, and it represents a saw. And then as soon as you finish cutting down the tree, bear in mind, you're still on the ship. It's just that you're playing this little mini game. You collect the coconut, and you do whatever you're doing for the rest of the game. And like that's all you do in the game. And when you go to a town or whatever, you can walk around, buy upgrades for your ship, but that's all you do. And by the way, one of the coolest things about Assassin's Creed 4 is you get to walk around on your ship. You get to find these treasure maps, and then when you go to these islands, you have to try and recognize where the X is. It's kind of the fun, right? But in this, and again, this was embarrassing, you pull your ship alongside the shore to where you think the treasure is, and you get a button prompt, and you pick up the treasure, and that's it. That's how you get treasure in that game. And it's a half-baked product. I think they've shipped it out at $70, and I said before the show went live, I think they priced it full $70, full £70 to get as much money as they can out of people because they know it's a failure. So as a point of comparison, last night, and I think maybe the night before, I posted a video of Assassin's Creed 4, the 360 version running via backwards compatibility, it has more features than Skull and Bones. The ship combat is arguably better. You can swing from one ship to another, take out the captain, and then take their ship's resources. The game opens up properly in Assassin's Creed 4 about after an hour, after you do a few little missions in the town. And you have to free some prisoners, and then you swing towards another ship, take out the captain, and then that ship's your ship for the rest of the game, the Jackdaw. And you don't do that in Skull and Bones. The Skull and Bones opens up with, and this isn't a spoiler, by the way. Skull and Bones opens up with this huge ship battle. You get destroyed. Someone finds you floating on like a piece of wood, and then they just say, "Hey, you can be our captain." And then all of a sudden, you're the captain of this tiny ship, and then that's how you upgrade your ship throughout the game. And I don't know, it's like Assassin's Creed 4 is so popular, and like millions of people have played that game. Millions of people have bought it. I think it's had over 34 million players. And wouldn't you think, like, hey, we have this huge success. We're going to make a game that's like that, but maybe not called Assassin's Creed. That's all they had to do. They had to make a game, slap a 2 on it, or just call it something else, and have it be the same, but different, but the same. And it's not. And it's so disappointing. And this is going to be one of those stories where maybe it doesn't do well. They'll shut down the studio. People will lose work. And it's like, why does the game exist? Why does the game exist? And it's sad. It's really sad because I'm playing Assassin's Creed 4 last night, and I'm thinking, like, this is better. This 11-year-old game, a 360 game, is better than a £70 2024 title. It blows my mind. And like, if people have had like Xbox Live Gold for years, check to see which games you own, because both versions of Assassin's Creed 4 have been available for gold at some point. And that's why I went to play the 360 version, because all those achievements are there waiting. But yeah, it's a shame. It really is. Like, a 360 port of Assassin's Creed 4 outshines Skull and Bones. That's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. I think that if people just like ship battles and that's all they want, get Skull and Bones. If Skull and Bones was like £30, I would get it. But 70 is just way too much. And we're going to be talking about the whole game price scenario thing in a bit. But man, it's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. But yeah, we'll move on because Skull and Bones doesn't really need that much attention. I do want to talk about something quick. I found out about this game about 3 hours ago, and a few people added me to this. And I don't know if you've heard about this, Logan. There's a game called Kingmakers, and it's based.
Sounds cool. I'm not familiar.
It sounds cool, and I think everyone listening right now will want to play it, because as soon as I saw this, I'm like, this is what video games are about. So apparently, you are sent back in time to back when medieval forces are fighting each other, with huge armies, with swords, shields, and bow and arrows and stuff. But you sent back in time with weapons. You have machine guns, grenade launchers, trucks, basically modern weapons and armor, and you get to help one of the sides win the war with modern weapons. It looks absolutely bat-crap crazy. And
sign me up day one. Sounds amazing.
and like it's pure video gameage, what I like to call it. Like, the clip is basically this guy running towards basically an army of people holding swords and shields, and he has a grenade launcher, and he's just destroying them all. And I was thinking, like, I want this. They've hinted that it's coming to Xbox. They said running on the Xbox Series S is no issue, which, okay. And they called the Xbox Series X a beast, and like, okay. But hey, people need to pay attention. Like, one of the things I like to do on the channel is talk about upcoming games and make videos about upcoming games each month. And I always post about some games most people haven't heard of. Well, this is going to be one of those games in the future. Kingmakers. People need to pay attention to that. It just looks fun. You're playing it looks single player, and you're basically being attacked by hundreds, if not thousands, of enemies with swords and shields. And yeah, it looks good. I think Kingmakers, it sounds like a whiskey. um, but yeah, I think people need to pay attention to that. Now, Logan, I know you want to talk about this quick, and I think it's going to be a big enough issue that I think most people will notice that the Tomb Raider trilogy, it came out last week. It's actually #1 on the store on Xbox in the UK. It looks like the team have done a fantastic job remastering the trilogy with new graphics. I think it's 4K 60 on Series X. You can go back and forth between the new and old graphics. You can also play with new and old controls. There's also a photo mode where you can compare. I think you can compare both versions, which I think's cool. And you think that would be it, you know? Well, Crystal Dynamics last week, they put out a Twitter post, and I've never really seen a developer do this, and they apologized for. And bear in mind, on a podcast live, we have to be very careful with how we say things. So they apologized for things that could be considered offensive in these 90s video games. And then Compulsion Games, they retweeted it for some reason and it acknowledged that, you know, it's okay to say you've done things wrong in the past because times have changed. Again, weird post. And basically, Crystal Dynamics said that they didn't censor the game at all, and they wanted to keep the game pure, which I think if people are playing a game like that, you should want, you know, the game to be as it was back in the day. And from what I saw up until yesterday, it did look pretty much uncensored. But as Logan let me know, I think last night, it turns out they have censored some things in the game. Certain paintings, the image on the back of someone's jackets, things like that. I know, Logan, you want to talk about this, so what's the deal?
Well, first off, about the game itself, it's a really good job of a collection of getting a iconic trilogy running on modern hardware. It's a great job by Aspire and Crystal Dynamics working together. They look so much better, run better, and it gives you hope for the idea of a Soul Reaver or Legacy of Kain, collection, or some of these, or Gex, some of these other collections coming down the line potentially from Crystal, assuming they survive Embracer, of course. Um, which is no small thing. And but yeah, they've been really good, but it was just kind of weird, like that. I understand that some artists and some publications and stuff feel a need to shield themselves from criticism, or try to distance themselves from things and put out there and go like, hey, look, this was from a different era. We that was then, this is now. Obviously, attitudes and views on some things have changed, but we wanted to be as faithful as possible, so this is, here it is, and there you go. Like, that doesn't bother me at all. And like that's just acknowledging things. Like, if you've I don't know if you've seen Gone with the Wind or not, but it's a classic film, and like it's on streaming stuff now and everything. And I remember, like, when they first added it to streaming, they added a disclaimer to the front of it to talk about, look, this film was made like an age ago, and it was about a, not only was it made an age ago, but it was about like a very specific time period and reflected that. And obviously, people today would have different opinions on how things are going and stuff. So, just letting y'all know, there's stuff in here you might not like. Like that doesn't bother me. What I just thought it was interesting that Compulsion highlighted it and then kind of hinted at the idea of rewriting things or revisionist type stuff, which I think opens them up to some criticism and potential judgment on their own upcoming works, whether fair or not. That if they come off as pro censorship or pro revisiting, revising, rewriting, reworking media content from the past. So I just think it's a slippery slope to go down, and I thought it was worth at least a little note to where keep an eye on that going forward, especially if you start seeing a lot of discourse towards them when their game comes out at some point.
Yeah, it is a weird topic, and it's something we kind of have to dance around because of the the nature of things. Like I think there's a difference between taking artistic license and censorship. Like there's a I can make any topic about Mass Effect. It's like my unique X-Men power. When Mass Effect Legendary Edition came out, people start complaining that they censored the game. They didn't actually censor it. They changed the camera angle for one scene because it was really out of place, but that same camera angle is back in the game, like maybe 5 hours later in the story. And it's because the camera angle they chose for that scene back in 2010 was very out of place. Even back then, I thought that was a weird camera angle, and then they changed it. But later in the game, like I said, that camera angle's there again. I think we're at a weird point in time in society where, and this is going into games, it's going into movies, television, even, which is dangerous, by the way, it's going to school as well, because there are teachers in the UK that they're not teaching certain parts of history because, and it's like, if we don't recognize the past, its flaws and all, we're doomed to repeat it at some point. And I think it's extremely dangerous, naive, and actually ignorant that people just want to forget things and pretend things were different. It's like we can't move on as a society if if we're letting all of this bother us. Like we have these disclaimers at the beginning of TV shows and movies now. It's like fair enough, but like you want to now change things. You want to change the past. The past was far from perfect, but why do we want to pretend all of a sudden it wasn't the way it was? And again, when it comes to Tomb Raider, it's like the picture on someone's jacket. Right? Not a big deal, but like I said a few minutes ago, it's there's teachers in schools that are wanting to completely teach people a history that didn't happen. And that is it. I don't know why people would be okay with that. It seems weird. And like, look, when I was at school, I hated history. When I left school, Assassin's Creed, weirdly enough, got me back into history. Like, I love history now.
It's great for that.
Yeah, in fact, some schools have actually used Assassin's Creed in history classes, to like teach people about the about ancient Egypt and like ancient Greece and stuff, and like that's a really cool tool. But people are learning about facts, and you hear about these schools that want to teach a history that didn't happen, and it's being pushed into video games and movies and television. And it's like there's a reason why people aren't buying or watching certain products. It's because of this. And yeah, just want to talk about that quickly because why are we pretending things didn't happen? It makes no sense. And censorship for video games, we shouldn't be for that at all. It doesn't matter what it is. And if you've been on Twitter in the past 24 hours, you know specific Resident Evil things have not been censored. And yeah. Anyway, we'll move on. And by the way, I do hope we see more collections like the Tomb Raider games. I keep port begging for Legacy of Kain. I think Legacy of Kain would make an excellent collection. And I don't think you can really censor that basically for what the game is.
It would be hard to.
Yeah, like 99% of the game takes place in caves, and you're fighting vampires, so I don't think it would be much of an issue. But yeah, I hope we see more collections like that. Aspyr did an incredible job. We call them a port studio because they are, but it turns out they can do really good remasters, and hopefully they do more. And maybe then they'll be able to do a brand new full-on game. Because remember, that the team behind that port and those remasters, they were originally going to do the KOTOR remake. So who knows how that would have turned out. But yeah, that's that. And, before we get into like the really big topics, and I think 90% of the show is going to be about the big topics. After all the stuff that happened last week with Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, and Sarah Bond, Engadget, one of the biggest media publications in tech, they put out a tweet saying, and with an article saying that Xbox and Microsoft should leave the console industry, the console space. And that kind of like shook me for a minute, because we've talked in the past before, like what would it be like and how bad would it be for the industry if there was just two consoles? If Microsoft all of a sudden, and by the way, we're going to be getting all the big stuff in a bit, but like Microsoft isn't going anywhere when it comes to hardware. People don't have to worry about that. But theoretically, if Microsoft left the console space, you'd have two choices for consoles, and one of them being a Switch, one of them being a PlayStation. Well, 90% of the AAA games you can't play on a Switch, so you'd only have PlayStation. And they could charge whatever they want for games. They could upcharge the hardware, whatever they want. Remember, this generation, console prices went up in the UK, in a lot of places around the world. And people just sat back and said it was fine. And game prices went up to $70 and £70, and people said it was fine. And I've told you this before, Logan, I've mentioned this on the show. Video games in the UK cost around £37 during the 360 generation. And then as soon as the 8th gen started, Sony started charging £50. And then throughout the generation, they went up to 55, 60, 65, and then with this generation, 70. And we hear these rumours, but not rumours, it's actual leaks, that Sony wants to charge $80 to $100 per game. I tell you right now, I will never pay £100 for a video game. It doesn't matter what Mass Effect logo's on the box. I am not paying £100 for a video game. Video games aren't worth £70. They aren't worth $70. I will die on this hill. And for Engadget, one of these, multi-platform media publications, to say that they want Xbox to leave the console space, that is dangerous. That's ignorant. And I don't know, Logan, what's your take on this? Because I was gobsmacked when I saw that. Actually speechless.
Yeah, the the Engadget article read like pure, reset era NeoGAF, or fan fiction, or somebody's mask slipped off kind of post. It hey, I mean, free society, people can think whatever, but it was just not a wise choice, and it was bad. And the whole idea of people wanting Xbox out of the industry, you may not prefer the platform, but I'd guarantee you'd much rather have the platform around to hate and dunk on than not have the platform around. Because if you have a scenario where there's no Xbox, then PlayStation becomes the only high performance, as ordained by, regulators and stuff, high performance console maker and ecosystem, and Nintendo does whatever they do. And then Sony can be like, that whole 80 to 100 thing we're thinking about? Yeah, we're just going to do that. And, their subscription services, all their other stuff can be jacked up the price. They can, be more, nitpicky on things, and, more restrictive on content, and, gouge more for smaller studios to get their games onto the platform. All kinds of not good things. Oh, and their prices for consoles could go way up, because guess what? There's nobody competing with us, baby. We're all by ourselves. High profile. And it's just yeah, it's terrible. Terrible, terrible idea. Hate Xbox all you want, but you much rather them be around and hate them than not have them around, period. That's just clown town.
Yeah, before we continue with the absolute trash fire that is Engadget, we have the first super chat of the day by Nick W. Thank you very much for the 9.99. He says, "I beat Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and it's awesome." Well, I'm happy to hear because that game looks amazing. It's probably going to be one of the biggest games of the year. My only problem, and I've said this before, my only problem with the JRPG Yakuza games like Yakuza Like a Dragon, I'm terrible at that combat. I hit that wall of difficulty spikes, and this happens with me in almost every JRPG I play. I hit a difficulty spike, and it really angers me to the point where I want to snap the disc. This goes all the way back to Final Fantasy X on the PlayStation 2. Those boss battles infuriated me to no end. I finished the game, but I played it over 2 years, not 2 games, 2 years, because the boss battles in that game are stupid. Like, really stupid. But yeah, Infinite Wealth, I do want to get it. I'm just worried about difficulty spikes. I'm wondering, Nick, does that game have Like a Dragon difficulty spikes? Because that game, when you fight in the sewers and all of a sudden you basically have next to no items and you fight two bosses in a row, like I wanted to put my head through the window. Like I do not like difficulty spikes in games. I think that, and look, I think people should be able to play games however they want, but when it comes to JRPGs, and me, I'm terrible. I've played JRPGs my entire life, but for some reason, I'm still bad at them. I'm terrible at Persona, but I'm loving it. And I'll get to, Like a Dragon at some point. But yeah, thank you for the 9.99 NXW. Infinite Wealth, I think, will probably be one of the highest rated games of the year. So many people love that. It just depends. When you play it, do you play it with English dub or Japanese? Choices, and I don't mention that for any specific reason. But yeah, when it comes to the Engadget stuff, like I think people need to ignore them. The reason I take screenshots of these articles and post them is because people can ignore them. They don't have to give them I don't have to give them the link so they can click on it because it's all ad revenue. That's what they prey upon. And we'll kind of roll this into the whole game price thing. The game industry is in a weird place at the minute. I've said this before, and again, I will die on this hill as well. I think $70 games are actively hurting the industry. We've had fantastic sequels to incredible games that just happen to cost more, like Star Wars Jedi Survivor. It's a better game than Fallen Order, but it cost more. Less people bought it. And every time a $70 game comes out now, I always see people say, "Hey, I'm going to wait for a sale." And I can't blame them. £70 or $70 is way too much. And if you live in Australia or Canada, like you're paying a lot as well. It's ridiculous how much you're paying for. I just saw 13K in chat mentioned Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree trailer. That better drop. I know Logan's a big fan of Elden Ring as well, but like there's port begging. We port beg JRPGs, I'll admit it, but I've been DLC begging Shadow of the Erdtree for 2 years, right? I want the expansion. That expansion's going to sell like hotcakes. Anyway, back to the topic. I think £70 prices are hurting games. Guardians of the Galaxy, people went into that thinking it was a live service game because Square Enix is absolute trash fire at marketing games. People thought it was like Avengers. But no, it was a single player game and it was £70. And I think, like, every time a game gets announced now, the price is one of the things that's announced. Like, oh, this is Capcom's first $70 game. Like, that's a news article. We never really had that before. And like I remember, like last generation, that wasn't a thing. People weren't making a big, deal about prices going up because in the UK, remember, we are now paying almost double 360 games. It came out the other day that Dragon's Dogma 2 is Capcom's first $70 game, right? Although weirdly enough, in the UK, it costs £61. So I don't know what that's about, but anyway. It's a big deal, and I there's all these layoffs. You have inflation. Games are costing way more to make than ever before, and these publishers and developers are thinking, "Hey, we're going to raise the price of our games and make the money that way." I think that is the dumbest thinking ever. Less people are buying your product, right? Sony have had lower projections for their games. Microsoft, their games at $70. Look, I think Starfield is an incredible game. It shouldn't have been £70. It just shouldn't have been. I think £70 for just games in general is just too much. And what have we noticed over the past month and a half? These AA games are booming. And this has actually been going on for months. RoboCop Rogue City. In the UK, I think it cost $45 or $49.99. That was number one on the Xbox store in the UK for about 2 weeks, or something close like that. And it's because it was a cheaper game. It's a great game, and I think AA games are really appealing to people at the minute because you have Helldivers on PlayStation. You have this AA game. People are loving it. It's a cheaper game. You have Palworld. Even though it's technically an indie game, we can lump it in with AA because of its price. And I think we're at this breaking point now where we've talked for years about how people want the most insane quality for these games. But I think now we're at this breaking point where people are just wanting a good experience at a low price. You know, Vampire Survivors, I think in the UK was £3, which is ridiculous considering how addictive that game is. They could have charged whatever they want for that, but you have this game that I think it won Game of the Year at the BAFTA Game Awards. This game that looked like it came out in 1985, and it won Game of the Year. Because it had a low price, people were willing to pay for it, and just get into the action that way. And I don't know, Logan, like, I know the price scenario is different in the US, you know, with all the inflation that's going on at the minute, because in the UK, inflation is hitting us hard. But the game industry, they are adamant to not lower the price of games. AA games are booming at the minute. And I don't know, like, do you think there's going to be a breaking point? Like, what's your whole thought on the thing? Because personally, whenever I see a $70 game announced and they just put it in the article like, oh, the price is a factor, it really annoys me. Like, it's a weird situation at the minute.
Yeah, it's a fascinating discussion. Like, I've had friends who have been, hashtag never day ones for a long time, where they just don't buy games when they first launch. They wait for a sale because they, look at history. You know, within a few weeks it'll go down in price, and within a month or two it'll go down even more. And like inevitably, especially from certain publishers, their games will plummet in price if you're just patient enough. But, there's FOMO and all this other stuff to where people are, day one, gotta get it. And for the most part, I've been a day one guy. But I will say the last year or two, I've been buying less and less games day one, and I'm personally waiting a little bit for some. Game Pass obviously makes that less of an issue for game Xbox titles. Obviously, I can play them day one and then buy them if I want to or not. But the fact that prices are hitting this point and potentially going to rise even more, and everything is feeling rinse and repeat, at least in some genres, quite a bit. And there's just this stagnation of creativity, and, just everybody wants just the same type thing. And it's just these AA games or indie games are scratching an itch that these other titles don't. Whether it's like a Vampire Survivors or Palworld or Helldivers 2. Just these games are like, wow, this is really fun. It's got a fun gameplay loop. I like the characters, I like the artwork styles. I can play it with friends or solo. It's got all these different modes and features and stuff. And it only cost 30 or $40 compared to $70 game. Like we talked about um Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones being $70 is absolutely shameful. compare that to Pal World at $30 from this tiny little studio that this is like their first major game, and it's blown up, and Xbox is front and center now with it, like putting in all their marketing. Like I'm seeing even at GameStop and other stuff, Pal World imaging attached to Game Pass and Xbox stuff. Like they are paired, linked. And honestly, prediction, I think Pal World at some point, I think that would be their next acquisition. Whenever they get to acquiring things again, I do think this is
Oh yeah.
one of their top priorities to get done. Um, for a variety of reasons, but yeah. And then on the other side, Helldivers 2 has been awesome. It's like that Halo 3 ODST fire mode, and like Starship Troopers bugs, and like all this fun stuff. And it's also goofy, and just it's taking off, and PlayStation's like, you know, putting games on PC day one and not at $70 seems to be successful. This is a revolutionary concept. Maybe we should bring more games to more people. And then people are like, "Oh my gosh, they said it." And so it's just fascinating that there people are in the higher rooms are finally coming to realize things that others have been saying for a long time.
Yeah, I think you're right about the whole creativity thing as well. And I've mentioned this before on the channel. I think gaming can be incredibly boring. Not the games that we play, but like there's no risk. The only developers taking risk are indie developers and AA games. And AA games like have had a nasty reputation for years, and I really don't understand why. We have these 8-bit indie games that can win Game of the Year, and we have these super mega budget AAA games that can win Game of the Year. But AA games get looked at this weird way, and I've never understood why. RoboCop Rogue City is amazing. Everyone needs to play that. Um, and I think like Immortals of Avon was trying something different, but that was basically a full price game. But like AA games, I think more people need to give them a go. That I mentioned this months ago. I don't think I've ever seen a AA game win Game of the Year from a major outlet ever. Indie games, sure. AAA, sure, but there's something about AA games, these lower price games, just don't get any attention. Although I bet we will see this year, Helldivers 2 will get nominated because it's Sony. And
Reasons, yeah.
yeah, like Jeff Keighley will probably play it and love it. But like I think like the $70 game, people are just kind of sick of it. Look at the last Call of Duty. That was originally going to be an expansion, and it was put out at full price. Thankfully, I got a really good bundle, but it's strange. It's strange because this entire generation, I've not paid full price for a game. I should say $70 for a game. I always use Microsoft points to supplement it because I think £70, it's just ridiculous. I'm not paying it. So whenever someone tells me they're not buying a game at launch, you have the people on the other side that say Xbox guys don't buy games. It's like, no, the numbers show that PlayStation guys don't buy games as well. It just depends on what kind of game is it, what's the variety like, and £70 is a lot to ask. Look at Spider-Man. People love that game. And then the sequel comes out. They're using the same city. It's got a little bit of an extra map attached to it. They charge $10 more because it's a new generation. Look at Nintendo. They charged £10 more for Tears of the Kingdom, and there was no console generation jump. They did it in the same generation. Nobody batted an eye. Nobody. You have PlayStation. They now want to put games on PC day and date. It's evidently clear that it works. That's why Microsoft does it. But I think we're at this weird breaking point now where you have these journalists posting about these live service games are going to fail. All these developers are being laid off. And I've seen people like Tom Henderson and stuff that's like gotten all these predictions right in the past, saying that games next generation are going to be $100. I'm putting this out there. I've been predicting a AAA game crash for about a year and a half now. If the price goes up to 100, nobody will buy those games. You have the few fanboys that really love specific IP that will buy them, but I think if the industry moves to $100 games, we're done. The game industry is going to crash. You're only going to have AA and indie games that are basically, available to buy. Studios are going to close down all over the place because $100, the whole thought process of $100 game makes me think, okay, so this is going to be like an Assassin's Creed Gold Edition, where you get the game and the season pass, where you get all the upcoming single player expansions. For that, I think, okay, that's worth $100. But if you just want a game, and you remember, buying a game is kind of risky. You may not like it. So now we're going to be having more of a risk when it comes to games. We're going to get less sequels for games, and we're getting games less often. I mentioned this the other day on Twitter. We used to get multiple sequels a generation because games cost less. They were able to put them out more often. And now we're at the point now where games can cost 100 million. 200 million, 300 million, and we're going to get what? One sequel to games that may do successful or might be successful, like once a generation. I hate the fact that we live in this timeline. If you follow me on Twitter and Logan, you'll know that we talk about 360 games a lot. That generation, we had it so good. We had 3 Batman Arkham games. We had 3 Mass Effect games. We had 3 Bioshock games. We had 3 Dead Space games. We had multiple GTAs that generation.
A ton of Star Wars games. A ton of great stuff.
Yeah, we had a ton of Star Wars games. There was first-person shooters, third-person shooters. There's a new fighting game out every other week. Xbox Live Arcade had these new interesting games all the time. And we had movie licensed games all the time. And what did we get last generation? 1 Mass Effect game. And everyone knows my opinion on that Mass Effect game. We had 1 Batman Arkham game. We had 0 Dead Space games. We had 0 Mass Effect. We had 0 Bioshock games. Right? And I just don't like the idea that going forward, we're going to be waiting 4, 5, 6, 7 years for sequels. So when, again, Mass Effect 4 comes out in 2029 or 2028, that's depressing, by the way, just saying the year. But when that game comes out, and it does amazingly well. People love it. It's the best game people want it to be. It's the Mass Effect 4 I've always dreamed of. If it does well, am I going to be waiting until, 2036 for the Mass Effect 5? I hate that. And it got me thinking about a year ago, I wouldn't be that bothered, and this is a bit of a hot take. I wouldn't be that bothered if graphics reverted back to the 360, but you had 4K, 60 FPS, because if you play things like Final Fantasy 13, if you play things like Halo 4 at these higher resolutions, they look great still. But now these games, people are wanting the latest Unreal Engine 5 features. They want realistic skin that stretches, Thanos' skin in the Avengers films, realistic looking characters. We want ray tracing at 60 frames with 4K on these consoles we have now, and it's all costing money. I don't know. I think me saying I want games to look like 360 titles may bother people, but I miss getting sequels every generation. I miss games not having to sell 12 million copies to actually do well. I remember games getting advertised and that were I don't know, it just seemed like a more fun generation during the 360, where I remember a time when we got multiple GTAs a generation. Wasn't that a cool time? Wasn't it a cool time when we got GTA 3 and then we got GTA Vice City, was that a year later or 2 years later? And then we got GTA San Andreas. And then we got GTA 4 in 2008, I think. And then we got GTA 5 in 2013. I don't know. It's as time goes on, I love gaming. I'm going to be playing games when I'm super old. I know that. But I don't like knowing the fact that if I play a game now and it's great, I'm not going to be playing a sequel for 6 years. And that game, when it comes out, it's going to cost $100. That really infuriates me. um, like Logan, do you think like people would accept a hit on graphics if it meant like cheaper? I don't know. I think people are finicky because like the mainstream gamer, 90% of the people that buy these games, that don't pay attention to gaming news, they want the best graphics at the best resolution at the highest frame rate. Like they don't really think about this stuff. But like I think in the long run, all of us wanting these super realistic games all the time, and the masses wanting realistic games, it's really going to set us back. Do you think there's any recovering from this?
Yeah, I think if there is a massive readjustment of expectations, or like you're seeing with Power World and Helldivers 2, people flocking to these other games and going, "See, we support this. This is creative. This is fun. It's not a exploitive or predatory pricing. It's not rinse and repeat. Just it's fresh, it's great, it's creative, it's fun, and it's not break the bank for your fun." And I think as long as people continue to support those and reject these blatant cash grab titles that are floating around, some of them, it will help. And as long as people stand firm on that. And as far as like taking a visual hit or stuff like that, I would honestly be fine. Like, there's a reason why I like older games so much. One, because I grew up with them. And two, because they were creative and fresh and different and fleshed out and artistically done and just well made games. And I could immediately jump into a sequel not too long after. Like guess today, like how many years you think it would take? Like if Knights of the Old Republic didn't come out in 2003, but was a 2023 game, and imagine like all the hype, the praise, just somehow it transferred over. It's a game released today with modern graphics, everything, all the bells and whistles, like the acclaim of that year, but today. It is insane to think that its sequel literally came out like a year, maybe 2 years later, and was regarded incredibly highly as well. Like, that sounds insane today. But it's true, it happened. And, like, we had all these great games, great ideas, different genres, things that are extinct and we have not seen in decades, gameplay wise, story wise, narrative wise, risk wise, all kinds of stuff. And it feels like I would personally rather have games look like they run on an OG Xbox or a 360, but be more creative and fun and in depth and offer diversity than paying for a $70 walking sim that is just a sad dad narrative, or have a 200 plus hour RPG that is just filled with soulless fetch quests. Like, give me heck, even Super Mario 64 graphics, but have a soul to it than this.
Yeah, it's weird, man. Like I'm looking at the GTA release schedule, and so GTA 3 released in 2001. Then we got Vice City in 2002. We got San Andreas in 2004. GTA 4 in 2008. GTA 5 in 2013. So far we're looking good. We don't haven't, and bear in mind between GTA 4 and 5, we had two huge expansions, which were basically the size of entire games. And what's this? After GTA 5 in 2013, GTA 6 2025. Like, come on. And bear in mind, during those other games I mentioned, we got GTA clones all the time, right? It costs less money to make.
Watch Dogs.
Yeah, Watch Dogs, Saints Row, Sleeping Dogs. I think we can throw Mercenaries in there. But like we had these like GTA style games by these other developers, and we had competition, and it's just like you see the game price going up thing, and when GTA 6 was first showing off, one of the top comments I saw was like, "Oh yeah, I would pay $150 for this," because that's when that rumor came. Like, I tell you what, if GTA 6 is $150, which I don't think it will be, no, I'm not buying that. And I say that as someone that was literally addicted to GTA Online. Like, that thing interfered with my actual life, where I was literally addicted. I was like the Cookie Monster from that Family Guy clip. Like, I could not stop playing it, and just no, I'm not paying that much money for a video game. Just the whole $100 thing, and what worries me the most is that whenever I see these articles come out and people like put out these blogs saying, "Oh, $100 is going to happen," I think maybe this is trying to get people to ease into the idea of it, because next generation's around the corner, and we're going to be talking about that in a bit. But like 2026 is just around the corner, really, if you think about it. Are you telling me that are they expecting fans, gamers worldwide, to be okay with just this all of a sudden price jump when the price of everything's gone up, and we're just meant to just take it? I don't know, man. Like, I live in a country where the price of consoles went up, and people just sat back and let it happen. Like, nobody complained, nobody whined, and it was just allowed. And it's going to happen with game prices going up again. And, you know, no wonder I champion things like Game Pass, because you actually get this thing called value. Do you know what you don't get value in? £70 games. It really infuriates me. And I can go all the way back to Skull and Bones. £70 for that? Really? Really, Ubisoft? £70 for just ship combat? Oh, sorry, not just ship combat. I can saw down trees to get coconuts. Thank you, Ubisoft. That's £70 right there. Bloody coconuts. Seriously, that coconut minigame is embarrassing. What were they thinking? But yeah, $100 games. I'm not having it. I'm not buying it. And bear in mind, in the UK, £70 games, if you convert that to dollars, we're paying, I think, $87 per game. So no wonder I'm annoyed.
Oof.
Yeah, and bear in mind, before the economy crashed, we were paying on average $95 per game. We're still paying too much, and I think that people are just going to sit back and let it happen. Because remember, like I said, in the UK, we were paying £37 during the 360 generation for games. And when it went up to 50, nobody batted an eye. Nobody wrote a single bloody article about it. It was just allowed. And I hate that. I absolutely hate that. Anyway, we'll change topics because I've been rambling for like half an hour about price. And it just infuriates me. But anyway, if you're enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps when you share these things out, because YouTube, it's an amazing website, but sharing the link sometimes it doesn't get into the algorithm. If you want to support the channel with super chats, it's very much appreciated. If you want anything read out or answered. Anyway, let's move on. Now, okay, so we may as well get into the big stuff because we have a lot to go over. Microsoft had their business update, and up until that, we had rumors all over the place. It got to the point where I think journalists saw someone post about a rumor, and they wanted to one-up themselves, they wanted to one-up each other, and they wanted to just be included. Like, oh, I can corroborate this, I can corroborate that, because you want to feel special, because you want to be, I don't know, included. Like, isn't it funny that people that were saying, oh, hey, Starfield is going to be multi-platform, and you have 4 or 5 people coming around saying, I can corroborate this. What does that even mean at that point? Because retracting it means that you heard from a bad source, or did you just want to be included? Did you want to be included in the whole, hey, you're not just an influencer, you're an insider? And I hate that term, insider. I've leaked stuff before on the channel and on Twitter. not super big stuff like Dragon Quest coming to Xbox, Yakuza, mainly ports, a lot of Ubisoft stuff. I leaked a lot of Mass Effect Andromeda details before that came out, but like the whole like, it seems like at the minute all game news are just leaks, and that's the only way to get people's attention. The Switch 2, Switch Pro, Switch OLED, all that stuff. Like some of the people that spread this whole Starfield going to PlayStation thing, they were posting about how the Switch Pro was coming. And then when the Switch OLED was announced, they said this is what they were talking about. And nobody batted an eye, and these same people were corroborating the Starfield leaks and the Gears of War leaks. And it's infuriating because all these people got a pass. These are people with far more subscribers and followers than me, and they get looked at as these, influencers with, like, I hate the word clout, but I just want to say, like, insidership. And rumors the past month have been all over the place. Gears of War going to PlayStation, Starfield going to PlayStation, the whole slate going to PlayStation, Xbox cancelling hardware, Game Pass not getting any more day one games. It's been absolute madness online. It's basically been Mad Max just online, and man, people have gotten angry online. People have lost a lot of followers by tweeting some mean things. People have, like, if you've been an Xbox fan on social media or just on YouTube or anything, you're used to negative comments, negative replies. It kind of comes with the territory. But some of these people that have had negative comments and replies for years, like, took all these rumors to heart and basically start attacking Xbox fans. And bear in mind, I'm not singling anyone out. I've seen a bunch of people do this over rumors. Just rumors. People losing their mind over just words. And like, I've seen people like put out statements saying they're not going to cover Xbox anymore because they don't trust leadership and all this stuff. And it's like, dude, calm your tits. Right? I try not to swear on the channel. That's not really a swear word. But calm your tits, because you're losing your mind over nothing. Rumors. And there's this weird thought that Microsoft only gets revenue from Game Pass. And that's where a lot of the rumors were coming from, that the Xbox hardware, that they're going to stop making them, and no more day one games because of Game Pass not making as much money as people want. No, Microsoft makes most of their money when it comes to Xbox off third party purchases. Be it you buy a game or DLC, expansion, whatever, indie game, like, Microsoft gets 30% of that. It's not Game Pass. Game Pass, they make a lot of money off that. But Microsoft makes most of their money when it comes to Xbox off you buying games and DLC. So it's not just about Game Pass. People buy hardware, and there's also the controllers, there's the merchandise. Like, there's way more factors into Microsoft making money off Xbox than just Game Pass. So people were losing their minds for a week, well, 2 weeks, and they finally came out with the business update. And what do you know? The sky didn't fall. We're still here. It's all good. And it's like, I've seen the past week, people have not wanted to back down from their stance of, like, Microsoft's going third party. They're going to take everything back. Your hardware is basically done. You're not going to get third party support, because that was a big rumor and thing people were throwing about, that Microsoft will stop getting third party support, and we'll talk about all that in a bit. But anyway, Microsoft, they came out with their podcast, and honestly, out of everything that had leaked, I'm doing air quotes, everything that had leaked, the thing that actually happened was the least worst thing that could have happened. So out of the gate, they squashed the whole Indiana Jones thing and Starfield going to other platforms. Granted, in a later interview, Phil did say they'll never say never, but Microsoft have always said that for everything. When they bought Gears back in 2014, they basically said the same thing then. And Gears is only on Xbox and PC. And people were losing their marbles. And they basically squashed that. They said that 4 games are going to other platforms, which was the big deal. I literally, minute into the podcast, I predicted that it was going to be Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment, Sea of Thieves, and Grounded. They make the most sense. And funnily enough, Phil literally said, and he didn't actually say Sea of Thieves, but he basically said what I've been saying on this channel for a month. That, my opinion, that Sea of Thieves would go to other platforms because Microsoft have basically maximized their mass sales potential on the platform. You don't really see people buying an Xbox for Sea of Thieves in 2024. Not that it's a bad game, it's a good game, but nobody's buying that game. What, 8-year-old game, 7-year-old game? They're not going to buy an Xbox for that in 2024, so they've maximized their sales potential. And that completely makes sense. Grounded, that makes sense. That's an ongoing kind of live service game. And then you have the smaller titles. Pentiment. If anyone is really getting angry that Pentiment is going to other platforms, I have to ask them, did you play it? Because I've noticed over this past week, people are angry over games I've never seen them talk about. You're angry about Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves? Never seen them post about those games. Bit funny in that, isn't it? And anyway, so that basically happened with the multi-platform games, and I honestly think that, you know, when Phil Spencer came out and said that they could introduce new gamers to those IP for when maybe sequels come out, they'll have to come to Xbox. That kind of makes sense as well, because Hi-Fi Rush Shadow drops last January. Everyone that's basically wanted to play Hi-Fi Rush, what, they haven't played it already? You have a PC or you have an Xbox or you play it on xCloud. You tell me that in the past year you've thought about playing Hi-Fi Rush, but you didn't, play it already, even though you have the device? That doesn't make any sense. And granted, in this whole time, I think Hi-Fi Rush, out of all those games, should be kept as exclusive and used as a marketing push in Japan, because obviously the characters, fit the style of like animation and that. But anyway, they kind of want to funnel over PlayStation and Nintendo gamers over to Xbox, and that makes sense. The industry isn't really growing the way people want it to be. Console gamers have kind of topped out at 200 million units, or should I say 200 million people. Like, if you add up the original Xbox, the GameCube, and the PlayStation 2, we're looking at, 200 million-ish. If you add up the 360 and PlayStation 3 and Wii, you're looking at about 200 million, and a lot of people that bought those consoles bought multiple consoles because, PlayStation 3's broke, Xbox is obviously broke, and everyone's grandmother had a Wii. So, but ever since then, the console user base hasn't gone up. Why is that? Like, even Phil Spencer said, like, do they either monetize their gamers more with, predatory microtransactions, or do they put the games elsewhere? Personally, I don't like microtransactions in games. So if they want to put Pentiment, Hi-Fi Rush on other platforms so they can fund me a sequel, hey, it's not the most ideal scenario, but I'm for it. Let PlayStation gamers pay for my sequel. I want my Hi-Fi Rush sequel. Let PlayStation gamers pay, I think it's like £25. Let them pay for it. I'm fine with that. Now, Logan, before we get into like the rest of the stuff you mentioned at the podcast, what was your whole take on the whole these 4 games? Even though they didn't say the names, but it's pretty much all but confirmed.
These 4 were the ones that, when you start compiling and making a list of things that make sense, these were the ones that made sense. And like we talked about last time, like, I think for the most part, there have been some that have been still, saber rattling, and not a single title can go over, or, whatever. Like, fanboy's gonna fanboy. Like, there's still some of that. But for the most part, rational, logical people, if you give them a breakdown of the type of titles to expect going over and why, give them like we said, the Oppenheimer or the Einstein whiteboard approach, where they break it down for you on this, written on a thing, and they show you and explain to you. You're like, okay, I understand. I do not feel anxious about that. It makes sense. It's not affecting me. And in fact, this might be the way I get more of what I want. Sounds good. Move along. No big deal. Like, to me, I have always been like, these type of games don't bother me at all going over. Hi Fi Rush, if I had to pick one of the four bothering me the most, it would be Hi Fi Rush. But in reality, it still doesn't bother me that much. And the fact that if they really want to make a huge dent in Japan and continue their efforts there, if they, think about it another way. Like, Tango is kind of on an island, you know, pun not intended, by themselves of Xbox studios to where, they're the one Xbox Japanese studio. So, and then all their contemporaries in Japan are releasing their stuff, PlayStation, Switch, all this stuff. And, theirs is like their family, their friends can't really experience it unless they're on Xbox. And just like, and it's a smaller title that was never meant to be a, console seller, Halo, Gears, Forza type experience. And if it blew up and just like goes, wow, this is making crazy hay on the Switch and on the PlayStation, and it sells like crazy or gets a lot more engagement, then that astronomically raises the idea of a sequel. Like, we've been wanting a sequel, and this is the best chance to get one for this particular game. And so I support it fully. I I'll definitely pick one up for Switch if they, assuming that is what is announced soon. Um, Especially if they did a Steelbook edition or something like that, and with Xbox achievements like they did with Ori and stuff, I'd be all over that. And as for the other ones, like Grounded and Sea of Thieves are community based games that have maxed out on the Xbox ecosystem, and they're meant to be played with friends and family across experiences, diversities, whatever. They're shared experiences. Those going multi-plat is for the best for their ecosystem and their viability to extend the life cycle of them and potentially create new content, new ideas, bring in new player bases, create spin-offs, all kinds of stuff. And then for Pentiment, Pentiment was a fun personal project type game that was approved, allowed to happen, came out really well done, awesome. But it definitely is not a system seller or a, you know, tier S tier like you must buy a console for this one game. Like, this allows it to be experienced by other people and, potentially fund other small creative risk titles like it. So those don't bother me at all. They make sense. I really want my Hi-Fi Rush too, so let's make it happen. Go support it. And then at the end of the day, like, things are mostly staying the same. They'll judge a few other games here and there, but as long as a core title like a Halo, Gears, Forza, core tentpole of Xbox doesn't go multiplat, then I am unbothered. I'll be okay. I even said I would live with it if they had just made Bethesda and Activision go back to what they were pre-acquisition and they were multiplat. I would have lived with it. I wouldn't have been happy, but I would have been able to live with it as long as they keep their core stuff. But it sounds like they're not even going that far. So it was a nothing burger. Everybody freaked out and turned on their brother against brother. Just like psychotic behavior meltdown, the likes we haven't seen before. Over rumors and FUD that started with a whole vague post about um, a highly acclaimed title during its time, and this and this and that, and then whole guesswork, piecing things together, things spiral. It's like, oh, Hi Fi Rush. Oh, now Sea of Thieves. Oh, you know what? I heard Gears of War. Let's just throw that one out there. Halo? Why not? Forza? Sure. You can't have too many car games. And then it was a whole me too type just spreading of nonsense. And honestly, egg on face for everybody. And it should be a lesson that don't trust everything you see on here. And sometimes people don't have the best intentions at heart when this stuff is spreading. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, before we continue with everything they said during the podcast, all this stuff spreads the same way. Some dude on Reddit says something, or I heard this, then it goes on to Reset Era, where they make 5 threads about it, where they start port begging Xbox games. Then someone from Twitter goes to Reset Era, takes a screenshot of the post, and say, oh, it's a fact. I heard this. I can corroborate this. And it's like, shut up, man. Shut up. Like, no, you can't corroborate shit. Again, try not to swear on the channel, but I can't help it. It's like, there's so much crap we've seen this past week. And I don't know, like, I just, like, again, I hit my breaking point, man. Like, there's people that are just, like, running with everything. And it's like, do I think Microsoft's going to stop at 4? I don't, actually. Now they say it's 4, but you have to realize Microsoft, they're in a weird position. Actually, a unique position, because most of the games they're coming out with in the future are actually single-player, big single-player games. But in the meantime, they also have smaller games coming out. When it comes to Microsoft's live service stuff, they don't actually have many in development. So, like, you're going to have some live service stuff go over there, and smaller games. And, like I said, the AAA, or say the console space, they aren't really going. PlayStation 4s are slowing down in sales because, let's be honest, this generation, for both Xbox and PlayStation, there isn't really that huge, massive reason to go out and buy a new console. The console prices went up in the UK and other countries, so it's like there's no reason for people to want to jump ahead and buy a new console. Hey, like PlayStation, they've said their consoles are in the latter half of the generation. Like, they have Pro consoles coming out this year. Like, they're all going to tackle things differently. I was going to say HellBlade, but Helldivers, like, that's a huge success. And they learn by making it multi-platform. And yes, PC is a platform. Like, these companies, they wanting to make more money in different ways. If you look at Microsoft back in 2016 when Quantum Break came out, they start putting games on PC. Sony's doing the exact same thing to get more money, just they doing it slightly slower. Sony's experimented with their live services and their subscription service, and they're going to learn. Microsoft's going to learn from this. So that was the 4 games, and again, people lost their marbles over thinking it was everything. Then they start talking about you carrying forward your games, because Microsoft, they have the only console that is backwards compatible with multiple generations of games. Like, when all these rumors were going around, people were concerned that, hey, all my hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars you've spent on Xbox over the years, is that just going to go in the waste because they're not going to get third-party support anymore? It's like, no, that's not really how it works. Like, look at the Wii U. The Wii U was an absolute colossal failure. Nobody bought software on the thing. Third-party developers literally abandoned that, like a year into its launch. And where are they now? They have the most successful console on the market. They are number 1. And it's going to remain that way for a while. And Nintendo, they hit a good spot. They had a really cool device that people wanted. And, like, look at this. The Wii U is a colossal failure, but one of their most successful games on the Switch is actually Mario Kart 8, which was on the Wii U. Right? It's because they re-released a game at the right time on a new platform, and they had success. And Microsoft's going to learn things the same way. Like, the Xbox One is looked at as this huge failure, but it sold more than the original Xbox. The Xbox Series X and S, that's probably going to sell about maybe the same amount as an Xbox One. But, like, I think people, you should be fine buying games, because over the past 2 weeks, people were telling me, like, hey, I'm not making any more purchases on Xbox until that podcast. And it's like people were genuinely in their feelings thinking, hey, they're not going to get any more third party games. It, like, calm down. Like, look at most AAA games. These developers have two consoles to choose from: Xbox, who's in third, and PlayStation, who's in second. Most of those games don't go to the Switch. And by the way, people will end up replying to this podcast on Twitter with UK sales figures. You can't use UK sales figures. I've talked about why that's so dumb. It's dumb. Physical media, we're going to be talking about that in a bit. Like, has been dying a death for about a decade because the company that owns Game in the UK basically tanked themselves because of apparently they don't know how to run a business. They basically messed up their entire company. But if you live in the UK, like, there's not much reason to buy video games at a video game store because, one, video game stores are rare now. I haven't been to a video game store in 3 years. Durham City doesn't even have a game store, and we haven't for about a decade. It is what it is. But anyway, then they start talking about hardware. Now, this is the really interesting part because, remember, Microsoft was getting out of the hardware business. 2 weeks ago, Xbox, no more hardware. They basically confirmed next generation's happening. They're working. It did sound they're working on multiple different kinds of next gen devices. Again, they didn't say what. But a lot of people have read into it that they're going to come out with a handheld. And we've talked about this before, how, like, 5 years ago, I think making an Xbox handheld would be the stupidest idea they could possibly make. If PlayStation wanted to make a handheld 5 years ago, I think it would be the most stupid decision they could possibly make. But now that you have the Switch, not the Switch, but you have the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, and basically like this multitude of PC handhelds proving that there is a market for these, I think both Sony and Microsoft next generation, they're going to come out with a handheld. And that will be one of their, next gen consoles. It kind of makes sense. By the way, I just saw, do we have a CEX? We have a CEX, but the new game section is about as long as my arm. And every time I buy new games there, they're scratched. I don't even consider CEX a new game store. But yeah, back to the whole hardware thing. Like, I think that Microsoft will go ahead. They wanted to get ahead of Sony this generation. Next gen, shall I say. Because that's what they did with the 360. The PlayStation 2 was selling so well, and the PlayStation 3 had its weird development that Microsoft got out a year early, and they took the generation. Sony's coming out with the PlayStation 5 Pro this year. Microsoft, they have no mid-gen refresh planned at all. They are going to come out with a digital console at the end of the year, but that's a different thing. I think Microsoft going full-on next-gen in 2026 is actually going to be good for them. People always get excited about next-gen tech, and as a gamer that loves, like, new tech, I'm all for it. We had mid-gen refreshes last time because the adoption of 4K televisions. We don't have that this time at all. There's no... like, Logan, we've talked about this before. How do you advertise a mid-gen refresh this time around? Do you write more 4K on the box? It's got more 60 FPS? Like, it doesn't make... like, look, can you think of any realistic way how Sony's going to market the PlayStation 5 Pro as opposed to how they did last gen?
I mean, if I were to market one, I would, brag about, hopefully more storage internally, because these consoles, like, that's another thing. Game sizes have gotten so ludicrous that your console can, like, store maybe 10 games of, like, some of the modern stuff before you have to uninstall or get external hard drives or replace the hard drive or buy one of those memory cards and things. That's a whole nother topic, but like, I would advertise a console that has more storage. I would talk about, maybe it's able to make all games hit a certain frame rate if it was even possible. Um, you know, ray tracing was kind of a fad for a little bit. I
Yeah.
haven't been seeing too many people brag about it too much lately. Um, so maybe even shinier, more heavenly lights coming in through the windows now. Shinier marble floors. You know, sweatier, athletes on on the court or field for the sports games. Like I'm not sure what a mid-gen refresh at this point does. Like I think we're at a point to where we need a massive generational leap of technology. Because to be blunt, the Xbox One was basically, like in some ways even worse than the 360 in like some of the graphics capacities and some of the stuff, performance and stuff. Some areas it was better, some areas it was frankly worse. And then they finally righted the ship with the Xbox One X. And then Series S and X have been an improvement on the Xbox One, but it has not been such a huge jump to where it's like I would understand if somebody hadn't made the jump yet. But I feel like they really, really need to make a quantum leap forward to justify another hardware purchase in the near future. And so I find a mid gen refresh particularly a hard sell. Unless, like I said, it was able to hit certain frame rates guaranteed, it had more memory, or it was portable fully like a Switch or a ROG Ally or something. Like unless it does that kind of stuff, I just think it's a tough sell cuz like are you really going to call it a PlayStation 5 Pro if it does basically the same things but it's a little thinner or a little shorter maybe? Like come on now.
Yeah, I think these companies in a weird spot, and I think Mike. I think Sony coming out with the Pro this year. I think that's just them wanting to get money from people double dipping. Like if you wanted a PlayStation 5, chances are you would have gotten one already. There aren't many reasons to buy next gen consoles still. And whenever I talk about the next gen Xbox, and again that's years away, I always get this one particular reply, and I 100% understand this, but I have a reply to that. I always get that this generation just feels like it's getting started, and people are 100% right when they say that. This
I
generation,
agree.
yeah, this generation started in the midst of a pandemic. We had no big E3 where people were able to like play the games, show the games off, and that. We were all sitting at home waiting for time to pass, and then they released consoles in a pandemic where most of the stores were shut, and we waited like a lot of games got delayed. Like Microsoft launched their next gen Xbox without Halo. Their launch title was pushed a whole year. But the pandemic pushed a lot of games back this generation. And like I still think there's power to get out of these consoles, and I'll use this game as an example. Dying Light 2. Dying Light 2 came out with like when that game came out, it had I think 3 visual modes. It had ray tracing, performance mode, and quality. Sorry, it also had a balanced mode where you had 60 frames and some of the graphical features from quality mode. Well, about a month after the game came out, that game got an update to improve balanced mode, and the game was at a higher resolution, more stable frames per second, and graphically looked better. And it just proves that these developers, and it's still one of the best looking games this generation, it proves that these developers can get way more out of these consoles. They just need the time. A lot of games get rushed out the door to meet the financials and stuff. But I think Microsoft coming out with a new console in 2026, it's basically them going back to how consoles used to be. We used to get a new generation of consoles every 5 years. It was only the 360 generation where it lasted an absurd amount of time. Like I remember back in 2010 and 2011, people were wanting next gen consoles. But remember that generation lasted longer because of the worldwide economy collapsed. So Microsoft came out with the Kinect to extend the life of the console, and Sony came out with the PlayStation Move to extend the console generation. And the consoles we got in 2013, and we've said this before, I've said this on Twitter, I think the Xbox One we got and the PlayStation 4 we got were way underpowered for the time. Consoles traditionally come out super powerful, and those consoles felt half baked. Those consoles we got, in my opinion, we should have got in 2010. Those exact consoles with that amount of power, because in the past, consoles have always been pretty powerful alongside PCs at the time. That generation, they were weak. But thankfully, the Xbox Series, Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro, people were able to get more power out of it. But this time around, I don't really see much market for it. And by the way, I'm saying this in February right now. When the PlayStation 5 Pro comes out, people are all of a sudden going to hype up power. And we've been told for 4 years, nobody cares about power, nobody wants power, 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 power. Those same people making the crappy thumbnails are going to be making crappy thumbnails saying PlayStation 5's a beast. It's going to happen. Anyway, the Xbox Update podcast. So after all the hardware stuff, and they pointed at stuff coming out this year, they said that the summer showcase is going to be big. There's been multiple hints that the summer showcase is going to be big, considering they have 40 studios now. I'm guessing it's going to be big. All in all, I think they got their message. Microsoft were basically given a minefield when it came to getting across the message, because people abandoned Xbox, people were writing off Xbox on Twitter. It was done. I think Microsoft did a really good job actually, navigating the minefield. And by the way, I don't think, if anyone listens to this and think, oh, he's a fanboy, I don't think Microsoft's perfect. I think they need to improve in a bunch of different ways. One, marketing. Actually market your hardware. Why don't you market your hardware and what it could do? We talked about backwards compatibility before. The Xbox Series X and S trailers don't actually tell you that you can play multiple generations of games. At all. Nowhere. Game Pass never gets advertised now. And their first-party games don't get much advertising. I think the DVR functionality on Xbox is terrible. When the Xbox Series X and S came out, we were able to record 2 minutes of 1080p, 60 frames per second footage, and now it's 1 minute. It dropped to 1 minute a year and a half ago, and we weren't given a reason why. Backwards compatibility, I think that's their strong suit. I still think they could do more in that area. So they can always improve in ways, but I think Microsoft, they navigated the waters, so to speak, with the whole Xbox update. And I think gamers should be, you should be okay knowing that games are coming. And also, about 6 months ago, Phil Spencer came out and literally said that we're going to see AAA exclusive games from Japan. Now, when will we see those games? Who knows? Like Logan said, they have Tango in Japan. There's rumors that they are making a JRPG. By the way, if they are, that game's going to be special. I think people need to calm down a bit. The gaming space the past few weeks has been a hellhole to navigate. People losing it. The journalists haven't helped. There's people stoking the fires a bit, which I don't like. There's people not backing down from their opinion that Xbox is going third party, even though Sony right now they've said that games are going multi-platform. Whatever happens in the future, we'll see what happens. But I think Logan, do you think their message came across was good?
Yeah, I think they did really, really good job, and they nailed it. It was not an easy task, like you said. It was a colossal minefield, and it was well, here's a old minesweeper. Good luck with it. And they did a great job. And was it perfect? No, but I think they did really good. They covered the basics and the major fears. Indiana Jones, Starfield are not going to PlayStation and Switch, at least for the near term. Never say never, but Another whole side thing that was a really annoying tangent that people kept clinging to and going on about. There are reasons why you don't say yes definitively never, because one, you don't know what the future holds, legally, platform wise. What if Xbox, reaches a certain point to where they have to go full third party? Don't think it's going to happen, but what if? Or what if regulators go, you know what? We are sick and tired of exclusives for anybody. Everybody's games have to be everywhere if physically possible. What if that were to happen? And then he had said never. And it's like, see, you said never, yet you're doing it. Or just just like he would never have done the in perpetuity agreement for Call of Duty, like Call of Duty will always, always, always be on PlayStation. It's like, what if, Treyarch and Raven and Sledgehammer and these other studios actually want to do something else? Or Call of Duty fades and it's no longer the juggernaut. Are you going to really just make them have to continually put something out just because they put something like in perpetuity? Like, there are legal and philosophical reasons why to say that. So the whole clinging to that is just cringe. Stop it. Um all right, back to the main thing. Overall, I think they did great. Like, my concerns were addressed. They're going to keep making hardware. My library's going to continue to be respected. They harped on that a bunch. Backwards compatibility. Like, my purchases, as somebody who has a rather extensive digital and physical library from OG Xbox to Series X, like, obviously I have invested some time and money and effort in the Xbox ecosystem. I was slightly concerned about that viability going forward. That being addressed and put at ease to where, whatever happens with some of their games, those will be taken care of and won't be an issue. That was a major relief and a major win for me. The fact that the majority of their games are still going to be exclusives, that yes, they'll have some other games. I would I would reckon they're not stopping at 4. I think that's just common sense, but I'm also not going to guarantee there will be more or say that the majority going forward. I think the majority going forward are going to stay as is. But, we'll see. But and then, I think they did a good job with, like we had predicted. You had, Phil sitting up there talking about Xbox in general, brand, what it means, plans going forward. Sarah talking about hardware, innovation in that aspect, and publisher relations. And then Matt talk about the games development and the game studios themselves. I think it went really well. They handled a difficult thing. I will say, going forward, don't wait until the house, the ship, the farm, the station, everything is on fire and sinking and falling off a cliff before addressing some things. Because, like, not every rumor needs to be addressed or stuff, but when you've got these, quote unquote journalists and other stuff with some articles and massive pool and all this all over the place, and you've built up a brand of communication, and then you have radio silence. That's just not going to cut it, and you get what happened. So, lesson learned, hopefully going forward, they are quicker to go, no, that's bullcrap, or we'll have an update on this in a, whenever. Just their messaging needs to improve, full stop.
Before I continue with the topic, I want to read out this reply I just got on Twitter. So I like to post the dumb replies, I guess, because I think they're actually quite funny. Someone replied to one of my posts saying, I tuned in tonight. Some of your community is a little different. In my experience, maybe a little unwelcoming. Checking it out, buddy. Peace. Now, I like to say we have the best chat on this podcast because nobody's arguing, nobody's name calling. It's all very chill. And I get weird replies like that, which makes me think, did you really listen? Did you really look at chat? If people want to see a funny post, it's on Twitter. But yeah, they navigated it well. I think, like, look, if Microsoft were going to mess it up and, like, go third party, get rid of the hardware, look, I would be on here shouting because I have tens of thousands of pounds in the Xbox ecosystem. And, what they came out with last week really put my mind at ease. I never thought they were going to go third party. I just wanted clear messaging. I will say this, Nintendo has their Direct tomorrow. There are already people kind of pre-panicking that if Hi-Fi Rush is going to be there, we already know games are going over. And this happens all the time, by the way. We already know games are going over.
There's nothing to panic about at this point.
Yeah, there's nothing to panic about. Like we already know this. So people, if you're on Twitter, if you are, I feel sorry for you. It's a hellhole, but we're there for life. We addicted. If people like go on Twitter tomorrow after the Nintendo Direct, people are going to be losing their marbles, saying, "Oh, Hi-Fi Rush is." We already know, by the way. There's people pre-panicking. And look, if people want to play Hi-Fi Rush on a Switch at 1080p, 720p, have at it. Let them fund the sequel. Let them fund a bigger sequel that'll be on Xbox. And like, even though we were told like a week ago what's going to happen, people are pre-panicking on Twitter, and it's kind of sad. And bear in mind, there's going to be multi-platform games during the Nintendo showcase tomorrow that will also be on Xbox. Apparently the Shin Megami Tensei games are going to be announced there for Xbox as well. They'll be there that day.
Oh, and, heck yes.
Yeah.
Finally.
And plus, people talk about third-party support. We're seeing more Japanese games come to Xbox. Final Fantasy 14, the beta releases on, I think it's the 28th. I'll have to double-check. But it releases this month. Actually, no, I think about it. It might be today. It's the 21st in the UK now. Actually, we had another super chat by Hacky Sack for $5. Thank you very much. He says, I've seen so much positivity this week between Helldivers players and Xbox players. It's almost unbelievable to see positivity on X. Love to see it. Heart emoji. You're right. Off topic, like Helldivers, they're seeing huge success on PlayStation and PC, and I do. Look, the console war is a thing on Twitter. People make memes. I see J-Rock always on Twitter posting those memes. By the way, the funniest like console memes on Twitter. This past week, I've seen a lot of people supporting Helldivers 2. Like, I don't have a PlayStation, but I think it's awesome that a brand new sci-fi game is doing really well. It happens to be a AA game. So I love the fact that like 99% of the people I follow on Twitter are Xbox fans, and I haven't seen anyone trash Helldivers 2. Why is that? Because I think, people, not every game that comes out, people need to combat each other. Like, Helldivers may not be for you, but it's good to see a smaller game on PlayStation do really well. The PC community are absolutely loving it. It's doing really well on Steam. Hopefully they'll get more servers spun up, but like it's seeing success, and I love seeing, and I always mention this, I love seeing sci-fi games pop off. Like we need more of them, and it is kind of funny seeing an entire fan base that's hated AA games and co-op all of a sudden love them, and if they're enjoying it, that's amazing. Like we need more of that. I want to see more AA games get huge support, and like look, Hi-Fi Rush, like when that game came out, I saw a lot of PlayStation fanboys absolutely wrecking that game. But the truth is, it's a good game, it's a smaller game, and I think we need more of that. Not everything needs to be a AAA $100 million game with super realistic animations. It can just be a good game. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. But yeah, thank you very much for $5, Hacky Sack. I think like gamers are in a good spot at the minute. Like there's worries around the corner when it comes to pricing and what's going to happen with consoles. Consoles are coming. Phil Spencer just came out today and said they have no intention of getting rid of physical media. And look, we could talk about physical media for 2 hours. It is what it is. In the UK, it's a completely different thing. I know in the US they're now pulling Blu-rays from, is it Best Buy? I think it's Best Buy.
Yes.
Yeah, which is it's a big deal, but like nobody's buying those forms of media anymore. We could maybe talk about that again at some point, but I think like right now there's great games coming out. People like look, people will lose it tomorrow when if Hi-Fi Rush is announced there. Um, but it is what it is. We already know. We already know. If it just means I'm going to get a sequel faster, so be it. And look, one of the big things I have against Xbox when it comes to marketing, they do not make merchandise for their games. Not really. We've talked about this before. Like PlayStation, if you look at any PlayStation content creator or fan or whatever, whenever they post pictures of their setup, there's always statues, ornaments, framed pictures, anything. Because PlayStation, they capitalize on their IP. They make, literal merchandise for their games. Microsoft, they don't really do that. They have a store where you can buy hoodies, t-shirts, pint glasses or whatever. They don't really capitalize on making merchandise based on their games. Like, you can't buy a Chai figurine, which I would love to have for the shelf. They don't really do that. I think that's something Microsoft could, maybe pivot towards and make more of, because that would sell. You have Ben Kenobi on Twitter who makes some of the best unofficial Xbox merch out there. He makes these Xbox coins. They are incredible quality. They look official. Microsoft should hire him to make a line of Xbox-centric coins where you can collect them. They'll do them for all the different IP. That would make money. But yeah, I think Xbox gamers can relax. It's Microsoft's in a weird spot because, look, they are third, but PlayStation second. People act like PlayStation has this huge one-up on Xbox, but the truth is Microsoft doesn't market their consoles in the amount of territories that PlayStation does. The Call of Duty marketing deal, I believe, ends this year. I have a theory that Microsoft, they're going to do the biggest push we've ever seen with Call of Duty marketing ever. It looks like Call of Duty may be launching in Game Pass this year. We also have titles like Diablo 4 coming to Game Pass next month. They have a huge year ahead. So even though people online are losing the marbles right now, there isn't really cause for concern for me. Like Logan, do you think Microsoft is going to make a huge push when it comes to actually marketing this year when it comes to Call of Duty and Game Pass? Because we know they have like 35 million subscribers, and like Call of Duty coming to Game Pass day one may actually be a seismic shift for them.
Yeah, I can think of about 70 billion reasons why. Yeah, they're gonna go absolutely haywire, pedal to the metal like their hair's on fire marketing push. As soon as that Sony contract is done, that deal is over, next day, boom, you're gonna see Call of Duty Game Pass advertisements. You're going to see Call of Duty, Xbox imaging everywhere, television, adverts, magazine, wherever. It's going to become synonymous. Yes, it's technically still multi-plat, like they promised it would, and have legally binding documents that it is. But they're going to do their utmost best to associate it with Xbox going forward. And I wouldn't be surprised if later this year you get a massive Game Pass, batch of Call of Duty specific stuff. Just like, we didn't mention it earlier, but Diablo 4 was announced for Game Pass on March 28th, I think. And that's the first of the Activision Blizzard King games coming to Game Pass. So I kind of think my personal hunch is they're going to do themed batches instead of everything at once.
Yeah.
Like we'll have a Crash Bandicoot and Spyro batch. We'll have a Call of Duty batch. We'll have a, the other Diablo titles batch. If World of Warcraft were to come to console, have that kind of as its thing. Like Tony Hawk mixed thrown in there with prototypes, just have themed batches. And that was another rumor that had been going around, is not only is day one Game Pass not going to be a thing, but Call of Duty or these Blizzard games and Activision games weren't coming to Game Pass actually. Turns out that was fake news. And Phil today in an interview with, I think Stephen Totillo, I can't remember who exactly, somebody, um, had a post about like, yes, Call of Duty is coming to Game Pass. It will be in Game Pass. So there you go. No need to worry about it.
Yeah, I think people can calm down. I think it's going to be a good year for gamers because, like, if you're on Xbox, like, there's a lot of games coming. They've hinted at the summer showcase being huge. Um, if you look at all the games that's been announced so far, they're all single player. All the stuff that leaked last year during the ABK, FTC, ABC process, that was all Bethesda stuff. Like Microsoft, like Xbox Game Studios, none of their stuff's leaked. So it's going to be interesting. I'll have to say this quickly while I remember it. So in 14 hours' time, the Elden Ring Shadow of the Earth Tree trailer is going to drop. Gameplay, 3 minutes of gameplay. Which is also where we're probably going to see the Elden Ring Xbox controller. From what I've seen, it looks like it may be a pretty pricey controller. But hey, if you're an Elden Ring fan and you want to get all that merch, then you're probably going to pay for it. But I think gamers can calm down. Like I think that we see too much forced negativity in the Xbox space specifically. Yet you have these journalist hacks that, let's face it, they prey upon negativity. They like this stuff. IGN's basically been fueled off it for the past month. Although they are the least consistent, how should I say, games media out there. They hate live service games with Suicide Squad, but they love Helldivers too, even though they made an article about how we need less live services. Different topic for another day. You know what? I could talk an hour just trashing IGN because of how inconsistent they are, but we'll not do that today. But anyway, gamers, good stuff's coming. And like I said, people tomorrow are going to lose it when Hi-Fi Rush or Pentiment is going to be there. I do wonder, though, if all the stuff that had happened last week, and if all that stuff would just go to the Switch, I honestly don't think gamers would be as angry. I think it's the fact that PlayStation is involved. People don't like it. The rivalry,
100%.
the rivalry between PlayStation and Xbox, that's been going on for a long time. Nintendo's just sitting there in the corner, minding their own business. Like, we okay with them. In fact, I rarely have arguments with Nintendo fans on Twitter. It's always PlayStation fans, and they always bicker for no reason on my posts, which are harmless. Anyway, that's it for today's show. Logan, it's been great talking to you again. It's like I said, it's a great time to be a gamer. People tomorrow need to calm down. Just because Hi-Fi Rush is probably, or Pentiment is going to be announced at the Nintendo Direct, we already knew this last week. So if you see people losing it on Twitter, try and remind them of that. You may have seen some of the posts already. People are pre-panicking. That's what we do now in gaming. Pre-panicking. Anyway, everyone in chat, once again, has been amazing. That comment on Twitter before, I think they're talking out of the arse. Best community on YouTube. We'll be back the same time next week. I mentioned in my last live stream after the Xbox podcast thing, my new mic, I'm finally getting it set up this week, so audio on my side will sound different as it does today, but it should be better. New technology and stuff. I have a video coming out between now and next week. Had to put last week's off. Little channel update there. Follow us on Twitter. All of our socials are on the description down below. Anyway, everyone, you've been awesome. We are out. Peace, everybody. And we're done.